Hey guys, Doolin, the co-founder of Nerdtopiacast.com here and the host of the weekly podcast, the aptly named Nerdtopiacast. You know, when a few friends and I first got this thing off the ground a little over 6 months ago, I had absolutely no idea what it would grow to, and we are standing on the edge of something big here, folks. We're not just a podcast anymore. We're a full website for all of your nerdy entertainment needs. So, what have we got here on Nerdtopiacast.com, you might ask? Well, I'm glad you did. Let's give you guys a rundown on the weekly geeklies, shall we? Let's. Okay, starting off on Monday. Let's kick off the week. Let's get things started right, man. Monday. On Monday, you've got the original podcast, Nerdtopiacast, hosted by this guy right here. Every Monday, I'm going to break it down for you with my co-host. Tuesday, come on back for Charles Baserap's comic book article, The Potentially Fantastic Four. Wednesdays, it's our spin-off podcast, Filmtopiacast 3000, with Greg McIver and Nikki Boom Boom, in which they're going to break down every movie that you might have seen in the theaters, movies you got coming up, and movies you don't want to see. Thursdays, you can read Chuck Stahlheber's naughty little advice column, Chuck Gives a Fuck, because that's right, bitches, my man Chuck telling it like it is. And then Bass Rap gonna give you another dose of comic booky goodness with Catching Up is Hard to Do. So you can pretend you know your way around the comic books. You're at a party and somebody's like, hey, you know, what's the deal with that lady Sif and Thor? She's kind of hot. And you go, oh, she made her first appearance in Thor number 12. And you can pretend to know all that shit because Charles Baserap's gonna provide that information for you, man, and no one will be the wiser for it. Friday, coming up on Friday. On Friday, you get a second dose of the Potentially Fantastic Four, Judgment Day, with Charles Baserap, and our weekly video cast, The Snugglebun Takes on The Walking Dead, in which our cute British correspondent Jessica Hunter will review the latest episode of The Walking Dead for you. But you gotta get through the British accent. She'll talk about the zombies. I can't do it, but let me try. Hello, zombie. Would you like a spot of tea? You know, I can't, man. I've been an actor for 20 years and I still can't do a damn British accent. Anyways, man, moving on. Saturday. Come on back on Saturday for Nerdtopiascope with Doug and Chris. Our friends across the pond are going to bring you a brand spanking new video cast every Saturday, lining it up for you, man. You can find it all on Nerdtopiacast.com. Our individual podcasts, they're both up on iTunes and Stitcher. Our video casts as well as our podcasts are all up on our YouTube channel. You can find it all on Nerdtopiacast.com, man. Our podcasts are both up on iTunes and Stitcher. Our video casts as well as our podcasts are all up on the YouTube channel, and you can see and hear it all there. Yeah, I can see clearly now, the rain is gone. Yeah, I'm not a singer either, don't hold it against me. Guys, you can follow us on Twitter, at Nerdtopiacast, or on our Facebook page, facebook.com/Nerdtopiacast. And here's the great thing, man. You ready for the hook? Here's the hook. Here's the catch. There is no catch, brother. It's all free, bitch. No money out of your pocket. We ain't charging you a single dime. Not until we start hawking t-shirts anyways, but we haven't crossed that bridge yet. We'll let you know. Alright, man, that's enough out of me. Now prepare to go ahead and enjoy another fine program from the Nerdtopiacast Internet Network.
I can't remember if I cried or if I laughed. I just remember I want my money back. I can't remember if it sucked or if I had a blast. All I know is at the end of the show, when the credits rolled, it said Filmtopiacast 3000.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Filmtopiacast 3000. I'm your host, Greg McIver, and with me is our venerable co-host,
Nikki Boom Boom Toimasu.
Nikki Boom Boom, and I don't know how to say that other part that he just said. That was Korean, right?
No.
No? Oh, I'm sorry, that was Mandarin.
No.
Because you're excited about the whole Mandarin
I
thing
am
coming
excited about the Mandarin being announced, or shown, rather, in the trailer for Iron Man 3 recently.
up. So that's why you're speaking Mandarin.
I think the tea I'm drinking is from China, if that helps.
Sure. Is that the name of the tea you're drinking then, what you just said?
No. Can we just talk about movies now?
All right, fine. I think the reason he might have been speaking in foreign tongues is because we recently saw a movie. It's not a Japanese movie, but again, it might have been the influence for the whole foreign tongue thing, is The Man with Two Iron Fists? The Man with Iron Fists?
The Man with the Iron Fist.
The Man with the Iron Fist.
He does have two of them. That's not the title.
Shut up!
Come on, we just saw this.
Okay, whatever. Well, that might just go to show how much I ended up enjoying it. So, no, let me ask you first. What did you think of The Man with Iron Fists?
Well, okay, so, because I've talked to a few other people since we spoke about this.
Okay.
And I was very excited for this movie. If you don't know, this is written, produced, directed by, and starring a man called the RZA, who
RZA?
The RZA, who is one of the members of the Wu-Tang Clan. I think one of the people that really pulled the Wu-Tang Clan together, in fact, and who has since gone on to, and of course the Wu-Tang Clan, gangster rap from back in the day that really incorporated a lot of kung fu movie imagery in their lyrics, which
Right.
was really cool. And so I was really psyched about this movie because, this guy who made all this music about kung fu movies got to make a kung fu movie.
Yeah, that's kind of cool.
Yeah, no, it's great in a way, but so overall with the film, a lot of really colorful characters drawn,
Yes.
some surprises as far as the setting and how things played out, because from the previews, I kind of assumed this took place in like Pan-Asian fantasy world, much like Avatar: The Last Airbender,
Right.
because we saw Russell Crowe and Matt Batista and the RZA all interacting in this like Chinese or like very Asian fantasy sort of setting,
Right.
But they're sticking with it takes place in China.
Yeah.
And there just happens to be the blacksmith played by the RZA, who's a runaway, not a runaway slave. He was a freed slave.
Yeah, he was a freed slave.
who then he got a bad rap for murder and hopped a boat to China for some reason.
Hopped a boat that was got in some trouble in
Yeah.
the sea and then crashed into China.
Right.
He ran into China.
My point is how improbable that is, and
Well,
and how I'm kind of almost would have preferred if it was like Asian fantasy world.
yeah, no, definitely.
So yeah, I guess the things I really liked about it, there were a lot of really cool, colorful characters,
Right.
Almost comic book style,
Uh-huh.
with and of course with the main character being a blacksmith, a lot of like really highly personalized, unorthodox weaponry.
Uh-huh.
That was cool. And I was really into the spectacle of the movie,
Right.
but there's not really much else. And I was kind of expecting that. I'm kind of a kung fu movie fan, so
Right.
I can put up with a lot of that. But there wasn't any kung fu in the movie either, which
No, it was a little
there
lacking.
was fighting and bloodshed, but like
Right.
if you're like a kung fu movie fan, you want to see like actual displays of martial artistry, and there really kind of wasn't that.
No, absolutely. There were made-up gang names like the Lions and
The hyenas
and the wolves and
yeah.
such, but no defined style. Even when RZA goes to visit the monk,
Mm-hmm.
played by Gordon Liu,
Right, which was a great little cameo.
which was a great cameo. Mr. Gordon Liu, he's expounding about a philosophy, but I don't think it's ever really well defined. Was it Buddhism that they were talking about?
Yeah, well, I think so, and
Okay.
basically, but it seemed like he learned about chi from Gordon Liu.
Right.
They made a big deal about that, and then he uses chi to move his iron
Yes.
fists.
Apparently, chi, when you focus it, will allow you to move inanimate objects, and this includes 2 iron fists that you have friggin' well soldered to your own stumps if
Right,
you happen
right.
to have gotten your hands cut off by Mr. Dave Batista there. So you overall, what would your final assessment of the movie be? What would you give it?
Like a C minus.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would share that sentiment. I just I didn't expect to be, enthralled by it, nor did I expect really high art or anything like that. I wasn't expecting a very cerebral story. The preview let you know that this was going to be a movie filled with buckets of blood
Right.
and people getting killed and colorful characters, which was really the saving grace of the movie, was the colorful characters. Russell Crowe as Jack Knife, the
Right.
drunken British guy who happens to have a gun knife. That's fun. Mr. Byron Mann.
He was my favorite.
Yeah, I think he might have been my favorite too. Who played Silver Lion.
Now, this is the guy that played Ryu in the abysmal Street Fighter film.
Unfortunately, he played Ryu in the abysmal Street Fighter film.
We're not going to hold that against him.
No, not at all. He really makes up for it in this film. He's just such a bright, energetic, funny villain.
Yeah, he manages to be like really funny, over the top, almost hamming it up, but it works. It makes him a really fun villain.
Committing to it, and yeah, it makes an absolutely fun villain. He was absolutely a bright spot in this movie. Mr. Dave Bautista was good in the role. I mean, most people know him as a wrestler from WWE, who has recently transitioned into some film work. He was fine in the movie.
I enjoyed seeing him in an action role.
No. He's obviously a giant mountain of a man with lots of muscle, so he was perfect for the role. His character, though, was one of the things that kind of bothered me about the movie.
Right.
One of many things about the movie that bothered me, aside from the 15-cent CGI blood that was in every scene. I mean, were they really not able to afford some friggin' corn syrup and food coloring? It looked like something out of Roger Rabbit.
Yeah.
To the point where, it started to take me out of the world of the piece. And again, I knew I was getting into a movie that was going to be mainly about spectacle, but it wasn't enough for me personally. It wasn't spectacular enough. And because of that, the errors in storytelling, the storytelling logic was very flawed, and it was more noticeable because the movie didn't hold up that bright, shiny light for you to go all crazy over.
Right.
Again, for me, seeing it, this is what I thought.
Well, and I think Batista's character, whose name is Brass Body.
In fact.
Because he can turn his body into brass, he can basically Colossus up.
Yes.
I think he represents... Like, he's just riddled with inconsistencies, his character.
Oh, absolutely.
In many ways, and I think he represents a lot of what's wrong with the movie. I mean, he's the only person in the movie that has a superpower.
Right.
Nobody else can... I mean, I guess RZA learns to move things with chi, so there's that towards the end of the movie. But nobody else can, fire a blast or, do anything cool like that.
No.
Colossus up like that.
He's apparently the only one, and there's never any explanation given.
As to why, yeah.
And if this had been a movie filled with things like that happening all the time, then you could just say, oh, this is the world of the film, and this is a world where people can do stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
But he seems to be the only one that can do stuff like that. And we're never told why. We're not sure if it's a chi thing, or if it's a magic thing,
right.
or if it's a very odd birth defect.
He's also the only person in the movie that makes any reference to a style of martial arts that he does. He strikes a pose at one point.
Okay.
And Riz is like, oh, tiger style. I thought your whole clan was dead. And he's like, yes, because I killed them. And
right.
that is never explained either. It's just
okay.
I don't know. Those are, and even they kind of, when we first see him, portray him in a very sympathetic light because he's surrounded by children and seems like a friend to children everywhere.
Right, he picks them up, gives them a little ride. They present him like a gentle giant.
Right, and then we find out he's a cold-blooded killer.
That he's a cold-blooded killer.
And even that's fine, but then it's like, well, we never go back to that
Not
redeeming quality side of him. He then kind of becomes like a rapist, too, towards the end.
He's a murdering rapist that loves kids. Brass Body. What a great guy.
Role model.
Exactly. So very inconsistent character motivations there. And then Also, another problem with our main character, the blacksmith, we don't really find out anything about him, at least about his, backstory, until we're an hour into the movie.
Right.
And it's only a 96-minute movie. And this is the character, this is supposed to be our central character. He does eventually become the man with the iron fist. Sorry if that spoiled it, but it's on the poster. But he narrates throughout most of the movie, talks about making weapons and saving up money to, release his girlfriend from working at a brothel run by the fabulous Lucy Liu, whom I think you've said more than once, I guess Tarantino has on speed dial.
Right, we've been doing a solid here.
Exactly. So, an hour into it, when we finally get his backstory about him being a freed slave that goes into China. But by that point, you've jumped around from so many characters. Like you said, a lot of colorful characters, and you keep jumping from one to another to another to another. You don't stay on the blacksmith for very long, aside from the narration.
If anything, the focus is on, like, the Lion Clan and the X-Blade character coming out for revenge and stuff. So, yeah. And at that point, I felt like it was kind of unnecessary. We didn't really need to...
At this point, no.
No, we didn't need that whole big flashback sequence.
No, not at all. At this point, the movie has communicated to the audience, we're not really concerned with this character. At least in the first hour, that's what it communicates with us. And then it backpedals and said, nope, this is your main man, even though we've given him maybe 7 minutes of screen time so far?
I wouldn't go that far to say that the movie was saying that they didn't care about the blacksmith.
Okay, maybe didn't care.
He definitely seems central to the action, but I guess my point is that you could have just man with no named him. He could have just been the blacksmith. We don't know how he got here, where he came from.
That would have been fine.
Maybe even if, like, there are ways you could have made this work. Like, if there were rumors about him thrown around early in the movie, like, oh, I heard he comes from here.
Exactly.
Or, I heard he can move things without even, even set up his chi powers.
There's a lot of little things they could have done to make this character much more interesting.
They didn't do those.
They didn't do any of that. And an hour in, we finally get a backstory. By that point in the movie, we could care less about because we've already met much more interesting characters. And now this man has become the hero of the movie. It just didn't fly with me. I don't know. There was, again, some fun stuff. Russell Crowe is great. Byron Mann is fantastic. Lucy Liu always does a fantastic job. Pretty ladies. Buckets of really, really fake-looking blood. It just didn't. It wasn't enough. So
out of loyalty to the Wu, and because there is at one point in the movie an army of kung fu prostitutes.
Yes.
I think I have to bump this up to a C- or C+, rather, C+.
Okay, I'm gonna stick with my C, just because I'm not quite as big of a fan of the genre of kung fu mania and. Rap as well. You've told me about the Wu-Tang Clan before and how much you like RZA, but
RZA.
What's that?
The RZA.
RZA, that's his name.
He's the RZA. You can also call him Bobby Digital.
He goes by Bobby Digital?
Well, he used to. I don't know if he's
Why?
still does. I don't know.
He went from Bobby Digital to the RZA. Fine, I'll say it. RZA. Anyway, so Man with the Iron Fists, not the best time you'll ever have at the movies. You could have a much worse time, but not the best time. There's other things out there. Speaking of which, you saw another movie recently.
I did see another movie recently. I went to see a movie called Cloud Atlas, which is by I was gonna say the Wachowski brothers, but I guess they're just the Wachowskis now.
Right, because there's Lana.
Larry Wachowski became Lana Wachowski.
Right.
So anyway, this movie stars Tom Hanks and Halle Berry, among others. There's kind of an ensemble thing going on, actually.
Okay.
And it's not gotten the best reviews. I really liked it, though. It's based on a novel by a guy named David Mitchell, who I've read some of his other stuff, and I really enjoy.
From the Mitchell Webb book?
No.
No? Aw.
It's not the Myth Child.
Aw, that's a shame. That would have been really cool.
But
really funny British show on Netflix, by the way.
It
The
is
Mitchell,
great show.
the
that
Mitchell
and Webb look. Yeah.
Yes, really funny. Check it out.
But it's it jumps around a lot, which can be very confusing.
Okay.
It's 6 different storylines that take place all throughout different times. The first one focusing on slavers.
Right.
In, I guess, the 1800s, 1700s, something like that. And then there's a storyline in the 1930s, one in the 1970s, one in present day, one in the far future, almost like a Matrix-like future in Neo-Seoul, Korea.
Okay.
And then the final storyline takes place, you don't know where, it's like 100 years after some big apocalyptic event, and it's kind of the remnants of society has formed into these hill tribes, and there's a separate tribe of like warlike, horrible people that hunt them down, and kill them, and eat them. And so anyway, what my general opinion on this at the end of the movie was that it was a more successful version of a movie that you and I both were kind of lukewarm about, which was called Babel.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Very lukewarm on Babel.
Yeah, like Babel seemed like a good idea that just kind of fell short in execution because they really tried to push it that these 3 separate vignettes were all connected by circumstance.
Yes.
But the circumstance was often like, okay, so what? Like
exactly, it was very thin.
It was very thin.
It was too thin, in fact. I guess, yeah, the point of the movie was to show, I guess, that we're all connected.
Mm-hmm.
But for that to really have worked, even if you were still going to go with these very loose connections, you would have had to have more stories, I think. Really show that everything is connected. So, like, yeah, I guess
that's what happens in Cloud
Atlas.
So
Cloud Atlas.
I think it's also served really well by the fact that they do cut back and forth all the time between these separate stories, and because, okay, this is what they did in Cloud Atlas. They take basically an ensemble of 7 or 8 different actors, and they cast them in almost the same roles in every storyline.
Okay.
And by that I mean, like Hugo Weaving, Agent Smith from The Matrix,
Very
Elrond.
nice.
He's in this film, and in almost every storyline he plays kind of the main antagonist, or like one of the big bads. And so does Hugh Grant, by the way, which really threw me for a loop. Yeah. I was watching it with my buddy, and he's like, "Hey, I think that's that Hugh guy." I was like, "What?"
Hugh Hefner?
He was like, Hugh Grant. I was like, that's not Hugh Grant. Because I haven't seen Hugh Grant in probably like...
Nobody has seen Hugh Grant in
a while,
years.
Yeah. And he looks different. He looks like a little like, well, obviously older, but a little more like distinguished. And he was a bad guy through most of these storylines.
That sounds interesting.
It was interesting. He was good, too.
So not just the befuddled Englishman that we've grown to, know and love.
Somehow mystifyingly charming a woman by being an idiot. No,
right.
He wasn't doing that this time. He wasn't being Hugh Grant, so I didn't recognize him.
Interesting.
I guess the only exception is like Tom Hanks and Halle Berry seem like they're the main characters in a few storylines, but then in the ones that they're not the focus, they're kind of like very interchangeable as to what their roles can be.
Okay.
But anyway, the point is that it shows more of a connection in that way. And I thought it was a bold choice because, not every one of these storylines takes place in... they're all very different settings. So, like, in the Neo-Seoul storyline in Korea, the main character is a Korean woman who is a clone, actually. That's not spoiling anything. You can find that out right off the bat. And so they have that actress appear later on in the film in the slavery time storyline.
Okay.
But they make her look as much like a white woman as they possibly can.
Oh.
Yeah, and so it looks strange, but you are aware, like, oh, it's because she's supposed to kind of represent the soul of that person in this other far-flung time. And so it's, yeah, sometimes it looks off, and you kind of, like, wag your finger at the movie and, like, I don't know, movie. But I appreciated the tight ensemble aspect that they created.
I don't know, man. If we were able to buy Looper with Mr. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's look, then I think we can put up with a lot. So.
Sure. And there were other connections too, like in the 1930s storyline, it focuses around a composer who writes a symphony called the Cloud Atlas Sextet, and he's a young budding composer, and he's taking notation basically for a much more older established composer who at one point during the night bursts into his room, and he's like, I just had a dream with the most beautiful music. In the dream there was this underground cafe and all the waitresses had the same face. And you realize he's talking about in Neo Soul, the clone girl. That's her job. She's cloned. Her and her sisters are all cloned and have the same face and work in this cafe and have no free will, basically, or have been conditioned to not have free will. Things like that. It just felt like a little bit more of a meaty connection and a meaty through line. Stop that.
Okay, sorry.
So yeah, if you want to see Tom Hanks in some really weird and different roles for Tom Hanks, because he really runs the gamut in this movie.
Okay.
He's everything from like a really evil, murderous doctor.
Really?
Yeah. To like.
Wow.
Yeah, he plays like a very like money grubbing, sniveling character in a couple of these storylines.
Oh wow.
Jim Broadbent's in the movie. He's great too. Invest.
I love Jim Broadbent from Moulin Rouge. Sorry, he's great in that movie.
So yeah, I enjoyed Cloud Atlas very much. I will say that at the end of the day, I don't think it has anything new to say. Like, the message is basically just one of like, love conquers all in any time or place.
And don't ever let Tom Hanks speak Creole.
Oh yeah, I mean that's another thing with the movie, guys, is that this was a bold choice for the filmmakers too, I thought, and I am behind it from a storytelling point of view. It might take you out of the movie a little bit though if you go to see it. Basically, in the final time, the like kind of end times after the apocalypse.
This is the end times. Sorry.
In the time after society's fallen and there are these hill tribes, they speak English still. But they kind of speak this like broken Creole English because it's 100 years after the fall and nobody knows how to talk properly anymore.
So the English Americans and Haitian dishwashers survived the apocalypse.
Basically.
Okay.
Basically. So if you're gonna hear Tom Hanks and Halle Berry talk a little silly to each other. Oh, and Susan Sarandon too. She's in this as well.
Hey, Susan Sarandon.
So yeah, get ready to hear them talk funny at the end of time. They say things like what is it? Like there's one part where it was like basically to you and me it would be like, oh, so you want to know the real truth of the matter?
Right.
That was what we would say, and they were like, oh, so you be wanting the true now? You know,
like
stuff like that.
Oh, no.
The true?
Oh, God, that's worth the price of admission alone to hear Tom Hanks say something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Fantastic. So, your opinion on Cloud Atlas was generally favorable.
Yeah, I really liked it.
Okay.
I did really like it. I think the Wachowskis did a fine job, and I think that they usually do a fine job if they are working from a source material and not trying to make up their own story, as with The Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions. Is that the name of the last one?
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yeah.
The Matrix Recycled. Yes, so fantastic. I wish I had actually gotten to see Cloud Atlas, but we had a bit of a hurricane up here in New York.
Sorry we were absent last week. We probably should have said something about that first off, but...
Sorry. No, we were just so anxious to get back into the saddle and talk about movies. We forgot to apologize for not doing a show last week, but in our defense, there was a hurricane. Lines of communication and transportation were down. I ate several people in order to survive.
It's true.
But we did make it through.
Well, and it's snowing outside right now. We're getting a bit of a nor'easter, so
yay!
I might have to leave before Greg gets peckish again here.
That's very, very true. You know, it was very sad. We drew straws at my place of business to find out who would be eaten first, and it was our head chef, so we killed him, and then we realized, oh shit, who's gonna cook now? Who's gonna cook the body that we just killed? So, you know, situations like that, but we survived, and that's the important thing. All right, well, we've just finished talking about the movies that we've seen. Is there any interesting movie news that has come out recently?
Since the last time we did a podcast, I don't know.
I don't know. I mean, I think there's a new James Bond movie coming out soon. Movie 43 looks really good. They just announced they're going to make 3 more Star Wars movies.
What?
That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I'm sure you've all heard by now, but we're going to repeat it anyway.
Lucasfilm was bought by Disney.
Disney for $4 billion. $4 billion. And basically, the first thing they said right off the bat was, we're going to make more Star Wars movies. So they're going to make the next 3 Star Wars movies, which has. What's the fan reaction been like?
Mixed.
Yeah,
very mixed, I think.
Okay.
A lot of people are furious and don't want any more Star Wars movies. And I don't blame them, because it's like after the last battery of
Oh, come on.
ordeals that we've had to endure
Can't
here.
really be much worse.
Right, and that's but I get it. It's like, don't mess with my Bible anymore. You know, like, don't try to add more chapters to my Bible, because it was really good before you started to mess with it.
The Bible already been messed up.
Yeah.
We would just have to remember those 3 really good chapters and just avoid the other not so good chapters.
Well, I myself, and others feel this way too, I myself am cautiously optimistic.
Yes.
Because, you know, everybody flipped out, and I did too a little bit, when Disney bought Marvel.
Right.
But, you know, over the course of the last round of Marvel, you know, how much it's flourished as a filmmaking company.
Absolutely.
You know, I've come to realize, like, Disney's not stupid.
No.
They know fans want a certain product,
Absolutely.
and they will deliver that product. They're behind Pixar, you know.
Yeah, exactly.
They know how to make a good product, even you know, and they can distance themselves enough as a brand from the other brands that they acquire.
Right.
So I'm kind of optimistic about it.
I think it could be interesting. I'm very cautiously optimistic as well. I think out of the hands of Mr. Lucas,
Right.
whom, you know, I give all creative, you know, credit for creating Star Wars originally, but it's time for him to step back again, kind of like he did with Empire and Return. And I don't mind the idea of him consulting on the movies or even coming up with the story, because he can come up with a great story. I mean, on paper, just like the bare bones aspects of them, like the stories of the prequels are not bad per se.
No, if you'd put them in the hands of a different director and hired another screenwriter, yeah, those could have been.
Those could have been fantastic.
Yeah.
But yeah, you put it in the hands of Mr. Lucas, and he just kind of crushes it and lets the idea crumble into dust. So yes, it's going to be put in the hands of his partner Kathleen Kennedy, who is going to be hiring some new talent to direct and write these movies. The first solid rumor, I should say, about who's going to be directing the new Star Wars movie, the first out of the next trilogy, is Matthew Vaughn, the gentleman that brought us Layer Cake and of course X-Men First Class, and he directed Kick-Ass, didn't he?
Oh, did he?
Did he direct Kick-Ass?
I don't know. I have
Kick-Ass.
to look that up, but.
Well, he directed Layer Cake and X-Men First Class as well. So that's the first solid rumor to come about, and that could be interesting. I think.
Yeah, I mean, I will also say I was on Topless Robot this morning, and they kind of poo-pooed on that rumor, just saying,
no.
well, just saying that, like, basically the only basis for that rumor was that Matthew Vaughn dropped off of directing the new X-Men movie.
Days of Future Past.
Right, and that it came around the same time as this news, and it was like, well,
that could have just been a coincidence.
Yeah, directors drop off of projects for different reasons all the time.
No, this is very true. I mean, it does seem odd, since he was so psyched about this project, apparently, to now have left it. But he has left the next X-Men movie in some very capable hands.
He has, because Mr. Bryan Singer is returning.
Mr. Bryan Singer is returning to helm his baby. He brought us the first X-Men movie, which was a pretty decent film, a decent comic book flick. Had some flaws, but he was given a day and a half to make it.
Right.
So he did pretty good with what he had to work with. Then he came back with X2, X-Men United, which was fan-friggin-tastic. Some people have even gone as far to say it's one of the best comic book movies ever made.
Oh, I absolutely think X2 is one of the best comic book movies ever made.
It's definitely up there. It certainly showed a lot of fan-favorite characters and some good light. I think most particularly Wolverine, finally got to show how kick-ass he could be.
Yeah, you get to see him, like, take the gloves off, and he's a killing machine. He killed some people in that movie.
No, he killed a lot of soldiers in that movie.
And he got shot in the head and got up like, what?
And he just kind of shook it off. Those are the things we wanted to see with Wolverine that unfortunately Mr. Singer didn't have time to show us all of that with the first X-Men movie.
We got some good Nightcrawler action.
Absolutely.
Of course.
A lot of fun stuff with that movie. So Mr. Singer is coming back to helm it. let's just hope he does a better job than when he directed Superman Returns. But no, he knows the characters from X-Men very, very well. I have full confidence with him, and I don't even entirely hate Superman Returns. I know you do.
I can't say it's not my least favorite movie of all time or anything, but I was disappointed with it. Yeah,
I was disappointed with it too, but I think the film does have some merits. But yeah, overall it is disappointing. But he knows his X-Men, so I'm very, very confident that he's going to bring us another fantastic product. Because I was a little lukewarm actually about X-Men First Class. Like
I was too. I kind of had to sit there and watch it with my brain divided.
Right.
Because as a kind of like just an exciting action movie, it's fun. And I enjoyed it. As an X-Men fan, I was like grinding my teeth. Because
they make some changes there.
Yeah, they made a few changes there. The only thing they really nailed as far as the X-Men universe is concerned is the kind of awesome epic bromance between Xavier and Magneto.
Okay, well they got that right at least.
And of course, Scott Avery. What's the actor's name that played Professor Xavier?
Oh.
From Last King of Scotland.
You made me forget.
Oh, well.
We'll get back to that in a second. I'm just going to slyly reach for my smartphone and look that up.
He and Fassbender tore it up. They were great.
Keep talking.
A lot of X facts that were gotten wrong in X-Men First Class.
He was in Wanted. How are we forgetting this?
And James McAvoy.
Yes!
James McAvoy. He was great too.
Yes. I didn't even have to use the phone. Fantastic. James McAvoy was excellent as Professor X.
But yeah, I mean, just to name a couple things, like they made Moira McTaggart a secret agent. She's never, ever been a secret agent.
Isn't she a scientist?
She's a scientist and like a colleague of Xavier's.
Okay.
What else did they do? Oh, the other big one is how badly Sebastian Shaw is not anything like what they portrayed. What Kevin Bacon did in the movie. And that's not really Kevin Bacon's fault.
So Sebastian Shaw wasn't a Nazi?
He wasn't a Nazi, and he didn't kill Magneto's mother in front of him.
Oh.
He doesn't absorb energy. He can absorb kinetic energy if you punch him or throw something at him.
Okay.
And then he can redirect it as a punch, but he can't, blow you up or anything.
Oh, goodness. Why did they make Magneto's helmet look so silly in that movie?
I don't know, Greg. I don't know.
Because it looked really silly in that movie. I remember a lot of people saw the picture of him wearing that helmet, and they were like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Why does that look so silly?
I can't.
I think his whole outfit at the end looked kind of silly.
He did look a little silly.
It looked a little too much like the comic
because
books.
he was Magneto and because he was doing badass things, I kind of gave it a pass.
Right. I mean,
because he did a good Magneto.
He did a fantastic.
Fassbender was pretty awesome.
He did a fantastic Magneto. The problem with movies like this, prequels essentially, is you already know the road that a lot of these characters are going down.
Right.
So sometimes it's a little hard to maintain the suspense or the false, wonderment, such as when Magneto and Professor X are working together, they're training rather, and Professor X is trying to tell Magneto, now lift that satellite, and he's trying, but he can't do it, and Professor X is like, oh, one day you'll do it, and the movie is trying to create a sense of like, well, will he? But we already know for a fact that he will. So it's not even really all that thrilling when he lifts the submarine out of the water, because we've known for 3 movies prior to this that Magneto can do things like that very easily. I guess it does require some suspension of disbelief, and allowing yourself to forget the other movies, but it didn't really work for me when I saw it the first time. I might need to revisit it, but there were just certain scenes where I was just like, I'm not really all that thrilled. I mean,
I didn't have a problem with it in that regard. My problems, once again, with my brain divided, as an action movie, what my problems with it are things like really weird motivation on Sebastian Shaw's part. His whole plan is that, mutants are the children of the atom, so if I start a nuclear war and spread radiation all over the Earth...
So he had the Adam West idea of just rolling around in radioactive sludge.
Yeah, he was like, well, this will kill everybody except all the mutants, because I love mutants and want to protect them, even though he kills several mutants throughout the film.
Right.
So it's just stuff like that of I don't know about your plan, bro. Like, I think that's gonna kill a lot of the people you're trying to protect here.
That's the thing, and getting back to what I was saying as far as why I was a little lukewarm on the film, it's not just the idea of, okay, well, I know where a lot of these characters are going, therefore I'm not interested. I mean, that's part of it. Nothing really big happened in this film. Nothing really hugely exciting happened in this film. He dragged a submarine out of the water and he stopped some missiles. Again, seeing as how we've seen Magneto do things like that in other movies, probably even things that are more impressive than what he did in this movie, when you're going to do a prequel or a sequel or anything like that, you got to up the ante every time. You got to give people a reason to come back to this story, to come back to these people. It was interesting to see the bromance play out, like you said, the two of them working together. And again, McAvoy was fantastic as a very enthusiastic Xavier, really loving the idea of helping these people and really taking pleasure, and that's fine. But as far as your other elements in the film, like the exciting things, you really have to raise the bar when you do a sequel or a prequel, and I don't think it did that this time. It was very by the book, I think. It was very standard stuff.
Sometimes you try to up the ante like that and you fall on your face, like with X-Men: The Last Stand, where they tried to have a big war, and it was just like the whole rest of the movie was so flimsy that it was just like. And the war was poorly executed.
Well, there was the two lines of people, and then they ran into each other, and there was a lot of, background skirmishes, and then, of course, the Icemen.
That's a whole other podcast topic.
That's
right
true,
there, that's one of my most loathed movies of all time.
We'll have to dedicate an entire cast to X-Men Last Stand.
But basically, so based on First Class, or just, based on his body of work, how do you feel about Matthew Vaughn potentially directing
I think he could do a good
Star
job.
Wars movie?
I think he could do a good job because I liked Layer Cake quite a bit. And again, I didn't hate X-Men First Class. I just walked out of it just sort of like, okay, that was decent. It didn't thrill me. I think if you give him a world, or a movie like Star Wars, which has a fairly expansive world, he might be able to do something because he's going to be working with, I assume, some pre-established characters already. They might be bringing some new ones to the mix, but because the Star Wars universe has just gotten huge now with all of the novelizations, which I guess a good many are technically in canon. Not all of them, but some. So it's a vast universe that's been created since, the original trilogy and even the prequels. So he's going to have a lot to pull from. Again, he didn't do a bad job with X-Men First Class. I think if he just gets a push in the right direction, I think he could do something really good with it.
Well, and also I will throw in here as well that in judging judging directors based on these X-Men movies, I think that's kind of a bad idea because does Fox own X-Men? Is that
it's 20th Century Fox.
Man, they're so controlling and they rush people and they don't give them the slack that they need. That's why the first X-Men movie's okay.
Right.
But it's not indicative of what Bryan Singer can do if you give him time and space. X2 is the exception that proves the rule.
Absolutely.
Which is what happens when you give a capable director time and space to make the movie he wants.
No, absolutely.
But they probably didn't give Matthew Vaughn. I don't know for a fact, but based on their track record, they probably didn't give that to Matthew Vaughn either. Because Singer was supposed to direct X3.
Right.
And they tried to rush him.
Well, yeah, he wanted to do Superman. He basically wanted to go do Superman and then come back to X3.
They're like, no, we want it now.
It's like, well, just give me a little time. I'm going to go off, make this movie. I'll come back, and you're fired. And I was like, all right.
Okay, get Brett Ratner. We all love Rush Hour.
Good job, Mr. Ratner. If that's the case with X-Men First Class, then it's impressive that he was able to make the movie that he was able to make. Again, not a bad movie by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I don't think it's a bad movie either.
I just didn't find it really as thrilling as, a movie like X2.
Of course. I will say, as far as the rumor about Matt Vaughn goes, it puts a little question mark over my head for this reason. So when they're gearing up to make Tolkien, you get Peter Jackson and Guillermo del Toro.
Right.
Like big names thrown around. I'm not trying to belittle Matthew Vaughn, because I think he's a good filmmaker.
Yeah.
But when Disney buys Star Wars, they call Matt Vaughn? I don't know, man.
Well...
why is he the first person in the Rolodex that gets called?
I don't know. It's an interesting choice, and again, I like Layer Cake. X-Men First Class is decent. A lot of people really like Kick-Ass, because I'm going to go out on a limb here and say that, yes, he directed Kick-Ass.
If that's the case, I'm kind of Maso Mano on Kick-Ass.
Right. I didn't like it, but I know there were things about it that you
There were
liked.
things I liked.
We can get into that now. We can get into another podcast. Do we want to talk more about Kick-Ass? Nah.
No.
Let's save that for another cast. Yeah. Matthew Vaughn, interesting choice. I think he could do some good things with it. We'll have to wait and see, though. There are certainly worse people that they could have gone with.
Oh, absolutely.
They could have gotten Brett Ratner. Or they could get...
Uwe Boll gets Star Wars.
Or, God forbid, Michael Bay does Star Wars.
Oh, Jesus.
Oh, God. That's not even funny. That's not even funny. Yeah, I should never say anything like that again. That's just awful.
Or Uwe Boll gets it, and it's just an entire movie about killing younglings.
Boxing them in a boxing ring.
Yes, yeah.
That's the next Star Wars movie, is just Uwe Boll in a boxing ring beating up younglings. It's going to be a fantastic affair.
And so just real quick to jump back, I guess even as much as I like what Bryan Singer's done with the X-Men movies in the past,
right,
and as much as I do have confidence in him, it's not him I'm worried about. I'm still a little worried about him coming back to the X-Men franchise, just because I'm almost in the same place that some Star Wars fans are. I'm like, don't make any more X-Men movies, because you guys are really bad at it. And even them bringing back Bryan Singer doesn't instill me with confidence. It's not his fault. It's like, I've seen what they do to him in the past. And
right. Well, you didn't like X-Men Origins Wolverine?
Once again, subject for a whole other podcast. If we ever do like our most loathed movies podcast, yeah, X-Men Origins Wolverine will be one of the movies discussed.
Jimmy,
back to back, Jimmy. As well as Dragon Ball Evolution.
We might have actually mentioned some of these on an earlier podcast.
It's possible,
but we'll bring them back from the dead for a special podcast where we will dedicate that cast entirely to movies that we loathe. We're not saying that's going to be our next one. It might not even be the one after the next one.
Oh, but someday.
It could be years from now.
When you least expect
it.
it.
Just walking down the street and you turn around and boom!
Bam!
Podcast about our least favorite movies of all time. You'll never see it coming. Well, great. I think we've covered a good amount of topics this time around. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
Buttons.
Buttons?
Buttons and tiddlywinks.
Go. Sir, we promised we would never bring up buttons and tiddlywinks ever again. You should be ashamed of yourself. I don't have anything else to talk about. And again, we've already established buttons and tiddlywinks are out. And I'm hungry, so I'm going to go cook some dinner. And I'm sure you all have, dinners to cook or,
lives to get
back to, taxes to do, and elections to cheer or grieve over.
Woohoo!
And that's about as far we'll go in that direction. Thank you again for joining us. I have been your host, Greg McIver, and with me has been
Nicky Boom Boom.
And we will see you next time.
This has been a production of the Nerdtopiacast Internet Network. Be sure to check out more podcasts, videocasts, and articles at nerdtopiacast.com.